Hi, and welcome to day 14 of Steph's Take live stream series, where I feature concepts from 2 books through the lens of the accountability evangelist. Today's books are What Got You Here Won't Get You There by Marshall Goldsmith and First Break All the Rules by Marcus Buckingham and Curt Coffman. Let's start with Marshall Goldsmith's book. So the premise of the book is that some of the behaviors that you may have been demonstrating to ascend in your career, that helped you ascend in your career, whether you know it or not, might actually be holding you back as you continue to ascend. So if you were an individual contributor and you behaved in a certain way and it got you to a management position, for example, once you're in a titled leadership position and you want to continue moving up into a broader leadership position, usually you have to change your ways a bit. And you may not even be realizing that you're doing things that are holding you back. So Marshall shares 20 habits that you should take a look at. So these are habits that are probably in your blind spot, which is one of the corners of what he calls the Johari window in his book. And the blind spot are things that are known to others but not known to you. So you're doing things that you don't realize you're doing, but everyone else notices. So what are they? Let's read a couple of them. I'm not going to read all 20 of them, but I'll share a couple of them with you. Winning too much, starting with no, but, or however, making destructive comments, telling the world how smart you are, speaking when angry, withholding information, negativity or let me explain why that won't work, clinging to the past, playing favorites, refusing to express regret, failing to express gratitude, and punishing the messenger. So that's a sampling of some of the behaviors. So what should you do about it if you are demonstrating some of these behaviors? Well, as always, ask for feedback. Ask directly for the feedback and genuinely show that you are interested in growing, and people will be more likely to be honest with you. The other thing you can do is what I call a sneak attack, where you don't have to ask, you just have to pay closer attention. So how you do that, Marshall says, is to turn the sound off, meaning you're going to become an observer in the room that you're in of how people react to you. So if they're not talking, you're really paying closer attention to their body language, their facial expressions. How are they responding to you? So when you walk into a room, do people light up? Do they immediately embrace that you're there? Do they kind of cringe a little? When you're talking maybe too long, do you notice that people are starting to tune out? There's a lot of different things you can notice just by watching how people respond to you, and that can give you a clue as to where to start. But of course, again, the best way to find out is to actually ask. So let me share with you what mine is. So I actually use this book as the cornerstone of a program I developed in my last organization before the one I'm at now, called the Ascending Leaders Program. And we had several cohorts go through the program. They really liked it. And the first day we started off with these 20 habits, and I had them select the top 3 habits that they feel that they have been exhibiting up to this point in their career. And one of the ones that I picked, the top one I picked, was adding too much value. So what have I been doing about that? I actually found a mnemonic somewhere called WAIT, which is why am I talking? So when I'm in a meeting with people, and I usually have lots to say. I mean, really, if I'm in the meeting at all, it's probably because I have something to contribute. And it's hard for me to sit on my hands because I do so much reading and thinking and processing that I just want to throw all my ideas out there. But if I do that, other people don't talk, and that's not a good thing. So to slow myself down, on my notebook, up very top, I write the letters W-A-I-T, wait. Again, why am I talking? And really try to pay attention to that. And I've even gone so far as to tick them off, meaning if I say something in the meeting, I might cross out the W. And the next time I talk, I cross out the A. So I give myself 4 opportunities to talk, and if I used them all up, unless it's really critical that I say something, I just don't. So that has changed quite a bit how I interact in the meetings. And I notice it when I don't use it, because I do tend to talk more than I probably should. So I do tend to bring that tool back into play. Now, the first time that I used it was actually pretty entertaining. So This was back several jobs ago, and I was in a large boardroom with a really big room of people, of HR leaders, and we were talking about goals for the following year. And excuse me, and we were talking about those, and I was sitting there staring at the weight on my notebook. I was also sitting next to my boss. And so I really paid close attention to that. And every time I thought I was going to jump in and say something, I realized, well, okay, that's actually already been said. So I probably don't need to say it another way just so it comes out in my words. And other times I'm like, well, maybe this isn't the place for that, or not sure this is the right time. And so really when it came down to it, I ended up only saying one thing. And I was waiting for it the whole meeting. And I remember it was about diversity. And it was just me waiting to hear, is that going to make the top priority list? And when I didn't hear it before the meeting concluded, I said, hold on one second. I just want to say that I don't feel like we put enough emphasis on diversity, and I think that needs to be prioritized at the top of the list. And so we discussed it and we adjusted our priorities. So anyway, after the meeting ended, literally as soon as the meeting ended, my boss turned to me and said, "What's going on with you? You didn't say anything in this meeting." So I find that pretty funny because he noticed right away the difference in the way I was interacting. And of course, I shared with him what I was doing because I didn't want him to think I wasn't engaged. I was really just trying to combat this behavior that I discovered I was doing. So that's an example of how you might take it to heart. Definitely not something you want to use to beat yourself up. You could certainly go through this list, and I recommend that you do, and find the ones that you really need to work on, but don't use it as an excuse to talk yourself down. It's really feedback, and feedback is a gift that you should open and embrace and use. Okay, so let's move on to first break all the rules. One premise of the book is that great managers are catalysts. They make things happen. And how do they do that? They do that by challenging conventional wisdom. So there are 4 keys that they do. The first one is when selecting someone, they select for talent, not simply experience or intelligence. So if you recall if you're watching this live stream series or you haven't, you can go back and check it out. Lou Adler in Hire with Your Head was adamant that the criteria you use to select someone is, are they competent and motivated? He said nothing about how many years of experience they had or anything like that. So this wisdom in First Break All the Rules is aligned with that. The next one is when setting expectations, they define the right outcomes, not the right steps. So that means you tell your people, this is what needs to happen. Better yet, you talk with them and you jointly decide what the right outcomes are. And then you set them loose. They may not do things the same way you do, and that's really hard for some of us who think there's a prescriptive way to do everything. But you really got to let them go at it themselves. If you don't, then you're shifting the accountability for doing that work from them to you, which means you're taking their monkey. Now, you may not know what I mean by that, but if you listen to tomorrow's live stream, the final in the series, you're going to find out. All right, the next is motivating. When motivating someone, great managers focus on strengths, not on weaknesses. So let me read a quote from the book about that. Focus on each person's strengths and manage around his weaknesses. Don't try to fix the weaknesses. Don't try to perfect each person. Instead, do everything you can to help each person cultivate his talents. Help each person become more of who he already is, or she. So that's also a counterintuitive thing, right? We've been told to focus on weaknesses and know your strengths and your weaknesses, and this book really pushes a focus on strengths. That's not to say that you totally ignore weaknesses, but instead of trying to turn them around into a strength, you basically address them so they're not really a liability anymore, and put people in roles where they spend most of their time using their strengths. Okay, so developing. This is the right person, wrong seat situation we discussed in How to Be a Great Boss. So some people will put themselves into roles that they think they want, but they don't really. But the role comes with some level of prestige. A classic example is the career ladder problem, typically in an engineering type of organization, where you have the individual technical contributor ladder and you have the management ladder. And both of them are very important. And the mistake that's often made is saying that if you're an individual contributor and you're really good at your job, the next step is to go to management. That's not necessarily true. And some people really aren't good managers and have no interest in it, and they shouldn't be forced into it. So you have to kind of work around that. And also, one way that the book says that you can do that is make other roles look just as interesting. Why not carve out alternative career paths by conveying meaningful prestige on every role performed at excellence? Why not create heroes in every role? So if you do that, then these really smart, highly technical, very gifted, hardworking individual contributors that have a great technical skill set that you absolutely need, they can stay in their lane and just get better and better at it. They can become fellows and mentors, but they don't have to necessarily take on a titled supervisory role. Another point I want to make from the book that's really important is to spend more time with your best performers. So that's also a bit against conventional wisdom, because typically you might find that or think that you really need to spend time with people who are underperforming to help them to perform better. But what happens when you do that is a couple things. First of all, you're spending all your time trying to move the needle kind of from the bottom to the middle, as opposed to from the middle or the upper echelon to the very top of excellence. Think about it. If you consider yourself a top performer, how do you feel when your boss is ignoring you? Right? You don't want to forego the autonomy that comes from being a great performer, but you also don't want to be ignored. You want to have ongoing mentoring, ongoing recognition, ongoing requests for your input, right? So if you're a leader, spend more time with your best people. That's how organizations thrive. Again, counterintuitive, but it's something that you really have to consider, and you'll notice the difference right away. So, in conclusion, in order to be a great leader, you have to examine your own behaviors and conventional wisdom to discover if you are working against your own development. Innovate to be of better service to those who will thrive under your leadership. That's it for now. I'll see you next time.